Good evening. And I'm going to talk this evening for a few minutes about a couple of other bills and a couple of other state legislatures that you just should know about. And um, wanted to first let me first show you to give you the geography lesson. Um, I'll just show you where this takes place. For here, one of the problems is in Indiana. There's Indianapolis. It looks like that's Washington Street looking downtown from about where RCA used to be. And that's, I think, is my father's grandfather's farm on the paternal side in Iowa, near New Virginia, Iowa, which is south of Des Moines from the early 1900s. And that's the high school my father went to. And then the other state is West Virginia, and this is the some of Cass Mountain, the Cass Scenic Railroad. This is where the overlook is. So, because one of the problems is in West Virginia. So I just thought I would start with that. And well, let me first bring up the fact that I have created an overview, which I will keep updating, issues that come up in various state legislatures that may threaten basically civil rights, particularly gay and trans rights. And I know there's some conflict between them right now, but I'm kind of putting them in the same boat just for the sake of this speech. And I know it's complicated. And also free speech um, have to do with cancel culture, maybe, and also put up um, litigation on things that have to do with internet speech, and particularly Section 230, if that comes up again. I'll be keeping track of them here, and I'll give you the link in the description of this video. But I talked about Florida last week, but I want to start talking about Iowa first, and we'll talk about West Virginia. The Iowa legislature has proposed a bill. I think it's 2046, and one of the things that it would do um, that we're quite concerned about is allow the allow the state to to prosecute a librarian or the owner of a bookstore for making obscene books available or materials available to minors. And of course, we know there can be problems with the subjectivity of the definition of obscene, and this could be greatly misused. And just for the point of view of my own work, the kind of books that could be signaled, things like genderqueer, is the obvious one, or maybe this book is gay. That other book, I've reviewed that before. My own books, books 1 and 3, not so much 2, but books 1 and 3. Um, there could be a problem with, um, maybe there could be a problem in that there are some small patches in particularly in book 1, which I pointed out back in 1998 when we were contesting COPA, and I really should have brought this up. We were con- contesting COPA, and this was the affidavits I made. You still have it online, and to submit to the court. The trial was in 2007. I actually went to one day of the trial in Philadelphia, went to the Supreme Court a couple of times. I was actually a party to that through the Electronic Frontier Foundation. Um, so it's conceivably could, theoretically, could have something to do with even my work. The other major problem would be back in West Virginia. Um, there is a proposal for a law which um, apparently would prohibit a transgender person from being within 2,500 feet of a school. Now, as if they were a sex offender. And I think I just said in the case of the Iowa law, one of the things that could happen to a librarian or a bookstore owner is being labeled as a sex offender. That was part of the law. But here, um, somebody is treated as if they were a sex offender, even though they haven't been convicted of anything. And that sounds like something that would be unconstitutional and sounds like a very dangerous idea. But nevertheless, that idea is floating around in West Virginia. And then the other, I guess the other thing I was going to mention was that in Indiana, um, there's a bill to not recognize gender identity at all. And there's discussion of what would happen if the Supreme Court ever overturns Obergefell, the same-sex marriage, because Indiana never repealed its own law against same-sex marriage. So the Respect for Marriage Act, as you remember, that Biden signed, requires states, even if they don't want to allow same-sex marriage themselves in their own states, to recognize the marriage from other states, which is the contradiction of DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act of 1996, which, remember, Bill Clinton was so happy to sign in 1996 because that still seemed like a moderate proposal. And even I've wondered, about the use of the word. I've said that you could define civil union to offer the same benefits, but use a different word. I've said that before. Just also generally speaking, um, the you know, generally speaking, I'm sort of in the middle to center right myself on a lot of things. This is a case where the right is going way too far, as they have in some cases with abortion in some states, like case in Texas. Excuse me, where they seem to want purity. They seem to want to protect themselves from being contaminated with contact with anyone that is not not morally pure and perfect in their eyes or something. That seems to be where they're coming from with some of this extreme legislation, like especially this idea in West Virginia. Um, so, yeah, I do have a problem with the way people are trying to use gender identity in the law, because it's as an identifier, as a label, it's very subjective. Particularly when applied to minors, especially when applied to minors with sexual orientation. I think essentially it's a more objective concept, even though you could use it as an identifier if you wanted to, but if you did, that would sort of embed the definition of binary sex. So it would almost be like a mathematical contradiction if the left tried to do that, although that's what some indigenous societies do. Um, So that's essentially where I am. I don't think I'd mentioned the 2020 decision, Bostock versus Clayton County in Georgia, where the Supreme Court said that the Civil Rights Act includes sexual orientation and gender identity. And of course, gender identity is a more subjective concept. It's a bit of a problem. But that's kind of what I have for today. And I do thank you for listening. And we'll see you again. I don't know why we will see you again very soon.